This is called the Citizens Rule Book. You order something from Infowars.com, you get one of these. It's got a handbook for jurors. It's got some other writings about Patrick Henry, jury of peers, freedom for William Penn, and Jefferson's warnings. It's got the Declaration, Constitution, and Bill of Rights. Lincoln said, "Study the Constitution. Let it be preached from the pulpit, proclaimed in legislatures, and enforced in courts of justice." Rights come from God, not the state. And if you're an atheist, they come from nature. They come from common sense. You have rights antecedent to all earthly governments, rights that cannot be repealed or restrained by human laws, rights derived from the great legislator of the universe. That's a quote from John Adams, second president of the United States. Section 1, a handbook for jurors. That this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom. Abraham Lincoln. Jury duty. The purpose of this booklet is to revive, as Jefferson put it, the ancient principles. It is not designed to promote lawlessness or a return to the jungle. The ancient principles refer to the Ten Commandments and the common law. The common law is, in simple terms, just plain common sense, and has its roots in the Ten Commandments. If you look at the Ten Commandments, you'll see that most every law in the books stems from one of those 10. In 1776, we came out of bondage with faith, understanding, and courage, even against great odds and with much bloodshed. We battled our way to achieve liberty. Liberty is that delicate area between the force of government and free will of man. Liberty brings freedom of choice to work, to trade, to go and live wherever one wishes. It leads to abundance. Abundance, if made an end in itself, will result in complacency, which leads to apathy. Apathy is the let George do it philosophy. Let Mark go to D.C. philosophy. This always brings dependency. For a period of time, dependence, and I'm guilty of that too. I should have been here years ago, much more than I have been, so we're all guilty of complacency. We can all do more. Complacency always brings dependency. For a period of time, dependents are often not aware they are dependents. They delude themselves by thinking that they are still free. We never had it so good. Man, we've got 1,000 channels on the TV. We got the internet. We can watch YouTube videos all day. And don't worry, be happy, man. Just enjoy all the toys we have. And that's the problem, folks, isn't it? I'm guilty myself. I don't know. But if we all just do more, we can get the job done. We've got to. So we can still vote, can't we? Eventually, abundance diminishes and dependency becomes known by its true nature, bondage. Bondage. Keep it local. Don't go to the federal government to fund your programs, to get your money. Keep it local. That's what the Constitution was all about, the 9th and 10th Amendments. Anything not specifically named for Congress to handle is for the states and the people to handle. The Congress is supposed to handle external objects, foreign policy, war, border security, things of that nature, of a foreign, external nature. Yet for the past 100 years and more and more, they've encroached their way like a big giant spider into every aspect of our lives. We got to get away from that because we are in bondage. That's why I'm here. I'm a slave. And if everybody listening to this is a slave, you're a slave of the divorce system, family courts, child support, CPS. Those are our masters. They are our masters. We are the slaves. We are in bondage. And people don't like to hear that. I'm sorry. It's a fact. There are a few ways out of bondage. Bloodshed and war often result, but our founding fathers learned of a better way. Realizing that a creator is always above and greater than that which he creates, they established a 3-vote system by which an informed citizenry can control those acting in the name of government. To be a good master, you must always remember the true pecking order or chain of command in this nation. Number 1, God created man and woman. 2, man and women, that's you, created the Constitution. 3, the Constitution created government. 4, government created corporations, etc. It's a chain of command. Our rights come from the Creator, not from the Congress, not from the family court. They just take them away. The base of power was to remain in we the people. But unfortunately, it was lost to those leaders acting in the name of government, such as politicians, bureaucrats, judges, lawyers, etc. As a result, America began to function like a democracy instead of a republic. A democracy is dangerous because it is a 1-vote system, as opposed to a republic, which is a 3-vote system. 3 votes to check tyranny, not just 1. American citizens have not been informed of their other 2 votes. Our first vote is at the polls on Election Day when we pick those who are to represent us in the seats of government. Well, what can be done if those elected officials just don't perform as promised or expected? Well, the second 2 votes are the most effective means by which the common people of any nation on earth have ever had in controlling those appointed to serve them in government. The second vote comes when you serve on a grand jury. Before anyone can be brought to trial for a capital or infamous crime by those acting in the name of government, permission must be obtained from people serving on the grand jury. The Minneapolis Star and Tribune in March 27, 1987 edition noted a purpose of the grand jury this way. A grand jury's purpose is to protect the public from an overzealous prosecutor. The third is the most powerful vote. This is when you are acting as a jury member during a courtroom trial. At this point, the buck stops with you. It is in this setting that each juror has more power than the president, all of Congress, and all of the judges combined. Congress can legislate, make law. The president can, or some other bureaucrat can, make an order or issue regulations, and judges may instruct or make a decision, but no juror can ever be punished for voting not guilty. Any juror can, with impunity, choose to disregard the instructions of any judge or attorney in rendering his vote. If only one juror should vote not guilty for any reason, there is no conviction and no punishment at the end of the trial. Thus, those acting in the name of government must come before the common man to get permission to enforce a law. How many people were taught that in high school? Were you? I wasn't. Not even in college, not in my paralegal courses or in business law. I didn't learn that till decades after that. You are above the law. As a juror in a trial setting, when it comes to your individual vote of innocent or guilty, you truly are answerable only to God Almighty. The First Amendment to the Constitution was born out of this great concept. However, judges of today refuse to inform jurors of their rights. The Minneapolis Star and Tribune, in a newspaper article appearing in its November 30, 1984 edition entitled, "What Judges Don't Tell the Juries," stated, this tiny print here, need a magnifying glass. At the time of the adoption of the Constitution, the jury's role as defense against political oppression was unquestioned in American jurisprudence. You there, Ted?
Oh yeah, I'm still here.
Okay,
Sounds
great.
great. I wish I could hand you a magnifying glass.
No, I'm good.
Okay.
At the time of the adoption of the Constitution, the jury's role as defense against political oppression was unquestioned in American jurisprudence. This nation survived until the 1850s, when prosecutions under the Fugitive Slave Act were largely unsuccessful because juries refused to convict. Then judges began to erode the institution of free juries, leading to the absurd compromise that is the current state of the law. While our courts uniformly state juries have the power to return a verdict of not guilty, whatever the facts, they routinely tell the jurors the opposite. Further, the courts will not allow the defendants or their counsel to inform the jurors of their true power. A lawyer who made Hamilton's argument would face professional discipline and charges of contempt of court. By what logic should jurors have the power to acquit a defendant, but no right to know about that power? The court decisions that have suppressed the notion of jury nullification cannot resolve this paradox. More than logic has suffered. As originally conceived, juries were to be a kind of safety valve, a way to soften the bureaucratic rigidity of the judicial system by introducing the common sense of the community. If they are to function effectively as the conscience of the community, jurors must be told that they have the power and the right to say no to a prosecution in order to achieve a greater good. Keep the families together. That's your power, jurors. You can keep families together. You're supposed to be the ones keeping families together. But in family court, you're diverted off into this wilderness of psychological evaluations. The experts, the priests, the secular priests have taken over the courts. Psychologists, the pseudoscience of psychology, a religion in itself, a secular religion. It's no good. More than logic has suffered. As originally conceived, juries were to be a kind of safety valve, a way to soften the bureaucratic rigidity of the judicial system by introducing the common sense of the community. If they are to function effectively as the conscience of the community, jurors must be told that they have the power and the right to say no to a prosecution in order to achieve a greater good. To cut jurors off from this information is to undermine one of our most important institutions. Perhaps the community should educate itself. Then citizens called for jury duty could teach the judges a needed lesson on civics. I don't think the judges need any lesson. They know what's going on. They're not stupid. If they can get a parent out of the family, they get more money. Simple as that. This booklet is designed to bring, again, Citizens Rule Book. You can probably Google it online and get it from other places as well. But you can get these from any order with InfoWars. This booklet is designed to bring to your attention one important way our nation's founders provided to ensure that you, not the growing army of politicians, judges, lawyers, and bureaucrats, rule this nation. It will focus on the true power you possess as a juror, how you got it, why you have it, and remind you of the basis on which you must decide not only the facts placed in evidence, but also the validity or applicability of every law, rule, regulation, ordinance, or instruction given by any man seated as a judge or attorney when you serve as a juror, in caps. When you're on the jury, you're the king for the day, king or queen. One juror can stop tyranny with a not guilty vote. He or she can nullify bad law in any case by hanging the jury. I am only one, but I am one. I cannot do everything, but I can do something. What I can do, I should do, and with the help of God, I will do. Quote from Everett Hale. The only power the judge has over the jury is their ignorance. We, the people, must relearn a desperately needed lesson in civics. The truth of this question has been answered by many testimonies and historical events. Consider the following. Consider the following. Jury rights. The jury has a right to judge both the law as well as the fact in controversy. John Jay, 1st Chief Justice, U.S. Supreme Court, 1789. The jury has the right to determine both the law and the facts. Samuel Chase, U.S. Supreme Court Justice, 1796. Signer of the unanimous declaration. The jury has the power to bring a verdict in the teeth of both law and fact. Oliver Wendell Holmes, U.S. Supreme Court Justice, 1902. The law in itself is on trial quite as much as the cause, which is to be decided. Harlan F. Stone, 12th Chief Justice, U.S. Supreme Court, 1941. Let me say that again. The law itself is on trial quite as much as the cause, which is to be decided. That's the power of the jury. The pages of history shine on instances of the jury's exercise of its prerogative to disregard instructions of the judge. U.S. versus Doherty, 473 F. 2nd, 1113, 1139, 1972. It's 473 Federal 2nd, Federal Reporter, 2nd volume, 1972. Law of the land. The general misconception is that any statute passed by legislators bearing the appearance of law constitutes the law of the land. Let me read that again. The general misconception is that any statute passed by legislators bearing the appearance of law constitutes the law of the land. The U.S. Constitution is the supreme law of the land, and any statute to be valid must be in agreement with the Constitution. It is impossible for a law which violates the Constitution to be valid. This is succinctly stated as follows. All laws which are repugnant to the Constitution are null and void. Marbury versus Madison, 5 U.S. 5 U.S. reports, 2 Cranch, 137, Thank you. 5 U.S., 2 Cranch, 137, 174, 176, 1803. Where rights secured by the Constitution are involved, there can be no rulemaking or legislation which would abrogate them. Miranda versus Arizona, 384 U.S. 436, page 491. An unconstitutional act is not law. It confers no rights. It imposes no duties, affords no protection. It creates no office. It is in legal contemplation as inoperative, as though it had never been passed. An unconstitutional act is not law. It is as though it has never been passed. Doesn't exist. Ignore it. If they come to take away your guns, forget it. They can't do it. Over your dead body. Only can they do it. It's a bad law. It's not a law. It doesn't exist. The general rule is that an unconstitutional statute, though having the form, oh, by the way, that last quote was from Norton versus Shelby County, 118 U.S. 425, page 442. The general rule is that an unconstitutional statute, though having the form and name of law, is in reality no law, but is wholly void and ineffective for any purpose, since unconstitutionality dates from the time of its enactment, and not merely from the date of the decision so branding it. No one is bound to obey an unconstitutional law, and no courts are bound to enforce it. 16 American Jurisprudence, 2nd, Section 177, late, 2nd, Section 256. A summary of the Ten Commandments. The Ten Commandments represent God's government over man. God commands us for our own good to give up wrongs and not rights. His system always results in liberty and freedom. The Constitution and the Bill of Rights are built on this foundation, which provides for punitive justice. It is not until one damages another's person or property that he can be punished. The Marxist system leads to bondage, and God's system leads to liberty. Read very carefully. This is the first commandment. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. Second commandment. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image. Third commandment. Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain. Fourth, remember the Sabbath to keep it holy. Fifth, honor thy father and thy mother. Wow, imagine that. Six, thou shalt not murder. 7, thou shalt not commit adultery. 8, thou shalt not steal. 9, thou shalt not bear false witness. 10, thou shalt not covet. It's okay if you bear false witness in family court, though. No problem. Directly above the Chief Justice's chair is a tablet signifying the 10 Commandments. When the Speaker of the House in the U.S. Congress looks up, his eyes look into the face of Moses. The Bible is the book upon which this republic rests. Andrew Jackson, 7th President of the United States. He said, the Bible is the book upon which the republic rests. The moral principles and precepts contained in the Scriptures ought to form the basis of all our civil contentions and laws. All the miseries and evils which men suffer from vice, crime, ambition, injustice, oppression, slavery, and war proceed from their despising or neglecting the precepts contained in the Bible. That's a quote from Noah Webster. Now, here's a summary of the Communist Manifesto. The Communist Manifesto represents a misguided philosophy which teaches the citizens to give up their rights for the sake of the common good, quote unquote. But it always ends up in a police state. Pretty close to what we have, isn't it? Hey, if the police can come and take away your kids, I'd call that a police state, wouldn't you? For no good reason. Control is the key concept. Read carefully. Number 1, abolition of private property. Number 2, heavy progressive income tax. Number 3, abolition of all rights of inheritance. Number 4, confiscation of property of all immigrants and rebels. 5, a central bank. 6, government control of communications and transportation. Communications. CNN, MSNBC, CBS, ABC, NBC, even NPR. Are there not strings to the government with those corporations? Yeah, absolutely. Number 7, government ownership of factories and agriculture. Number 8, government control of labor. Number 9, corporate farms, regional planning. In other words, big government. Number 10, government control of education. Hey, Department of Transportation, does that ring any bell there? Federal control of education. Imagine that. If our founders only knew, man. They'd be jumping out of the graves. Give up rights for the common good. Where the people fear the government, you have tyranny. Where the government fears the people, you have liberty. Politicians, bureaucrats, and especially judges would have you believe that too much freedom will result in chaos. Therefore, we should gladly give up some of our rights for the good of the community. In other words, people acting in the name of government say we need more laws and more jurors to enforce these laws, even if we have to give up some rights in the process. They believe the more laws we have, the more control, thus a better society. This theory may sound good on paper, and apparently many of our leaders think this way as evidenced by the thousands of new laws that are added to the books each year in this country. But no matter how cleverly this Marxist argument is made, the hard fact is that whenever you give up a right, you lose a free choice. This adds another control. Control's real name is bondage. When you get federal funding, you lose sovereignty. You lose control. You don't want federal funding. The only thing that the federal government should spend money on is things having to do with external objects. War, peace, trade, foreign commerce, trade, and the security of our borders. Not anything that the states would normally deal with. And people don't realize that the states were actually the equivalent of France or England, any country in the world. They were sovereign, just like France and England are today. At least the ones who are trying to leave the EU. Before they were in the EU, they were sovereign anyway. If they can get out of it, they'll be sovereign again. It's really kind of a similar thing that the Congress has taken illegitimate authority over matters. It's kind of like the EU has. When the countries in Europe joined the EU, they had to obey these laws that the leaders of the EU just passed, not by elected representatives, but just by appointees. So it's an analogy there, the Congress to the EU. We got to take back control from the Congress. This adds another control. Control's real name is bondage. The logical conclusion would be, if giving up some rights produces a better society, then by giving up all rights, we could produce the perfect society. Utopia. Yeah, everybody turn in your guns. And then there'll be peace. Right? Sorry. Don't work that way. That's why Europe's being overrun now with Muslims. Very strict gun laws, except in Switzerland. We could chain everybody to a tree for lack of trust. This may prevent a crime, but it would destroy privacy, which is the heartbeat of freedom. It would also destroy trust, which is the foundation for dignity. Rather than giving up rights, we should be giving up wrongs. The opposite of control is not chaos. More laws do not make less criminals. We must give up wrongs, not rights, for a better society. William Pitt of the British House of Commons once proclaimed, "Necessity is the plea for every infringement of human liberty. It is the argument of tyrants. It is the creed of slaves. Necessity. Well, we need money. We need more money to keep families together in California and Iowa and all the other states. We got to have that federal funding to keep families together. What? No, it don't work that way, folks. Not supposed to.